the centering prayer has gone really by other names. It's an apophatic kind of prayer, which means it moves beyond the support of concepts, images, words, and rituals. And not that it denies them or rejects them, but that it adds to their contribution the very a new dimension, intimacy with God, that is cultivated in interior silence. But we don't consider it to be new. It's a contemporary expression of the methods that are used by the Desert Fathers and enhanced by experience and by new ways of saying things by the mystics of all the ages down to the present time. I described, as you remember, how you leave behind your ordinary environment. And we do this simply by closing our eyes as a symbol of letting go of the external world, with its turmoil and its concerns, its newspapers and its wars and all the turmoil that comes to us from the external world in which we live and the immediate environment we're in. It's a great help to have a solitary place, but it's not essential. It's a great help to do it in a group because one has the advantage of the attitude or the spirituality of the group, which seems to help to bring at least many people to a deeper level than they experience alone. But still, we have to be able to do it alone most of the time. Then we introduce, ever so gently, the sacred symbol we've chosen, which usually we teach it as a word of either for God or for Jesus, but it can be another word such as peace or listen or calm or something that feels comfortable for us by way of an expression of our intention to consent to God's presence and action. And that's the heart and soul of the prayer, is consenting to the divine presence within us. Don't have to go into any details about how its presence there, but that it's a presence that is close, loving, supportive, caring, tender. And we don't think about God during the time of the prayer, but we simply maintain our intention to consent to God just as he is, without demanding to know what that is. And so when thoughts come down the stream of consciousness during the prayer, which is inevitable and an integral part of the prayer, we don't resist them, don't hang on to them, don't react emotionally to them. And when we notice we're thinking about them, or to put it another way, are engaged with a particular memory, plan, thought, image, we renew our original intention that we made in the beginning by repeating the sacred symbol, or in the case I'm following here, the word that we chose as the gesture of our intention to spend this time in the presence of God and to consent to it.
And repeat, that doesn't mean to say it aloud.
No, we always say it silently. It doesn't have to be articulated carefully. It can be only a beginning of a movement to saying it in our mental process. And we don't say it unless we need to in order to renew our intention. And that's not so much a judgment as a kind of intuition. You do what you feel comfortable with. Like in the beginning, one has so many thoughts, one needs to return again and again to that sacred symbol of consent. Later on, there are periods, somewhat long, where you know you're not interested in thoughts. They're just like clouds going by, and so you just pay no attention to them. And that usually brings an experience of deeper rest, or of being in a deep place, or of being quiet, or of being still. And so we allow ourselves to follow that attraction, which is which is the attraction of the Spirit from our inmost center, inviting us to join the Spirit beyond thoughts and words in just a being to being encounter. In the Book of Exodus, God calls this a mouth-to-mouth exchange, which is obviously something like a kiss, so that centering prayer is really similar to making love. You don't do it all day long, but it adds a dimension of one's relationship with God that is incomparable, and then affects all the other details of life and all the other ways in which one may wish to pray in a positive manner. And it gradually brings the presence of God into daily life as a kind of fourth dimension that is present along with our three-dimensional world without effort. It happens spontaneously, and it continues to grow. And thus, to repeat St. John of the Cross's insight, that human health consists in the continuous awareness of God's presence. So it's a question, really, put it another way, of hospitality. God is inviting us into his world, not only his world, but his very life, and not only his life, but his interior life. So that everything created is a stepping stone into that life, which can be accessed by any number of doors and windows. It's the myriad paths. Every sense ultimately is rooted in our spirit, and if our spirit is rooted in God, then it becomes itself a direct freeway into the divine presence and action. So we recommend 20 to 30 minutes, because it takes about 20 minutes to settle down for most people. And by doing this twice a day, especially early in the morning when one's thoughts are more free, and then later in the day when it's more of a struggle to quiet down, one creates an atmosphere of interior silence that it seems to be available all the time, especially in times of trouble or temptation. And that's reflected in the Psalms that call God my fortress, my strong tower, my rock. In other words, the remembrance of God is a place that you can go for refuge in times of difficulty, anytime. And so we say that the benefit of centering prayer is most available in its effects in daily life than in the psychological experiences of a particular prayer time, because they can reflect the unloading process I spoke about earlier, when it's not pleasant. Some sessions with your psychotherapist are pretty painful. You just as soon drop those. But because you're paying for it, you usually show up. Well, God doesn't charge, and so we easily miss our interview if it's not going according to the way we want it to go. So we have to let go of our expectations as a part of the entrance into the prayer. And that's done simply by introducing our intention, just to consent to God's presence in action without any other effort at all for the whole of this time. And gradually the effects are cumulative, and one begins to more frequently access the source of God's presence within, and also to perceive the divine action in daily life, which is incredibly detailed, and which is prepared to live every day with us as a companion. Notice, companion is from two Latin words, com, which means with, and panis, which means breath. So it's another symbol of how intimacy or identification is expressed by eating bread together.
What does it mean to say the word gently? Can you give some allegorical?
we suggest saying it ever so gently, meaning as effortlessly as possible. So that is meant to suggest not to use the word as a vehicle to go to a deeper level of consciousness, or to use it as a bulldozer to push away other thoughts, or as a baseball bat to knock them out of the ballpark or out of your head, as the case may be. So ever so gently means you just say it or refer to it. Even you don't even have to say it, just start to say it would be enough under most circumstances. So there's no pushing, no trying, no effort. So admittedly, there is a little effort involved just to return to the word that you've chosen as the symbol of your consent, but you're not trying to impress it on your memory or on your mind or to push other thoughts away. You just sort of lay it in your consciousness like a feather on a piece of absorbing cotton, or as a drop of dew descending on the grass. You scarcely notice that it's happening. But and as you keep doing this every day for a few years, then it begins to become habitual. So there's a movement of the spiritual will that begins to occur without any word at all. Remember the image that Paul has, that as Christians, baptized persons, we're incorporated into a larger body that is both human and divine, namely the mystical body of Christ. So that we're living cells with our particular DNA in this body of which the Spirit is the DNA, and suggests the whole program for transformation. So we have all we need for this process. We're just not using it. And this is the work of contemplative prayer, to activate the divine gifts that we've received, like the theological virtues and the fruits and gifts of the Spirit, which are ontologically, so to speak, present in our unconscious. And by diminishing or evacuating the emotional junk of a lifetime of repressed material that opposes our sensitivity to those gifts, that those gifts will gradually begin to predominate, and we'll be healed of the emotional wounds of a lifetime, let go of the false self, and allow the new self, as Paul calls it, to be born, which is the true self, that is to say, the image of God within us, gradually becoming the likeness of God that we either lost in the fall of Adam and Eve or never had, because of the evolutionary process hasn't reached that stage yet.